In other words, it's not like their words are arrows sticking in you. They don't stop in you. They aren't you. They're someone else's words. You're hearing them, but they're going straight through and they don't have to stick. In other words, you don't have to suffer. And this is good in so many aspects of life. You don't have to suffer from what you're hearing. You can empathize, you can suffer later if you want. But let's just say these are passing through. My job is to be a conduit of information, not their best friend, not their judge, just a conduit of information. I'm listening, I'm here.
Welcome to MetaGagement, the HR show that dives deep into the heart of employee engagement and workplace culture. Your hosts, Ann Scottlin and Dr. Lyman Montgomery, bring you a groundbreaking show that explores innovative strategies and insights to transform and elevate your organization's HR practices. Dr. Montgomery is an employee engagement expert and best-selling author, while Ann Scottlin is an acclaimed business consultant and podcaster. Together, they will unpack the complexities of modern HR challenges and reveal innovative solutions that can be immediately applied to your workplace. Please welcome Ann Scottlin and Dr. Lyman Montgomery.
Welcome back, my fellow HR friends and professionals. Welcome back to MetaGagement-HR. This is the podcast that's redefining what's possible in the world of human resources. I'm here with my partner and co-host, Dr. Lyman Montgomery. Hi, Lyman.
Hello.
And I'm Ann Scottlin. And if you're joining us for the first time, MetaGagement-HR is about making the possible probable in your HR department or in your company. Our purpose is really to equip you with advanced interview techniques, which we're going to talk a lot more about today, and how to gather accurate information when you're doing workplace investigations. And in this episode, we're going to focus on how to conduct effective interviews during workplace investigations. So we're going to emphasize the importance of neutrality, empathy, thoroughness, but that's just the beginning. So hang in there to find out more. This is now our second episode out of our 4-part series called Conducting Workplace Investigations. Lyman, what have you been investigating?
As a master investigator, worked with a number of organizations doing workplace investigations as well as workplace training. There's always something that comes up, whether and it's not just, for HR. You can, you're investigating, what's a good sale price of, a car or something. So all of us kind of go through this investigative sort of sleuth detective mentality, but I think you can do a workplace investigation and have fun doing it.
I think so. I mean, well, this wasn't with workplace, but I have been investigating the price of cars, and I am not impressed. I think I'm going to go on strike and go back to a horse.
Yeah, there you go. Bring back the horse and buggy. There you go. Yeah.
But yes, so effective techniques for interviewing, for really doing all your homework, as we learned back in grade school, right? Really do your homework.
Yeah.
And to start out with, we're going to talk about these interviewing techniques. First of all, do us a huge favor. Give us a like, subscribe to our feed, whatever platform you're on right now, and shoot us a question in the comments, or you can always email us as well. We'd love to hear your suggestions, ideas, questions. So I think, Lyman, as we get started here, nothing beats preparing. So first of all, we have to prepare for that interview. And I think the first step in preparing is really setting the right environment. So confidentiality, comfort, how do we create a safe and private space for interviewees?
Yeah, that's great. And it's also perhaps one of the most, if not the most important aspect of workplace investigation. You've collected the initial information, you know who the players are, you know who those that have been accused of maybe a policy violation, whatever it may be. In the last episode, we talked about generally there are 3 different types of categories: attendance, performance, or behavioral, which tend to be the more serious type. But you also want to make sure that you ensure confidentiality, and that's setting the tone. that people, especially if they're a witness, and that if you tell the person, listen, um, we're more important. What's more important to us is to get the facts right. And as much as we can, we will protect the confidentiality. Now, there are some cases where the state and federal law does not allow you to guarantee confidentiality. For
Mhm.
example, and if you're dealing with issues involving children, the
Mhm.
elderly, the disabled, you are considered a reporting responsible party, which means you are obligated to notify law enforcement. So
Yes. And I
letting
think that's what
people
we were
know,
talking
yeah,
about last time too, which was, even bringing in an external investigator if necessary and in law enforcement as well. So, first of all, you just don't want to put yourself in the line of jeopardy for your
y-
job or your license or anything else,
yeah,
right? You want to make sure that you're following the law and that and remember there are people designated for this. And I've seen this go wrong in the past too, where someone even higher up in the food chain who kind of felt like they owned the company, maybe they did, and they could just jump in and do whatever the heck they want to, jumping in inappropriately, disrupting it, not handling the proper flow, didn't want bad press. So part of doing this correctly is also making sure that you're choosing to work for someone who's on the same page in their ethics and belief system
that
of
is so important. Because if not, you end up like the companies we've all read about or saw, where they have now been charged with a major cover up. And sometimes it's criminal. We're shredding documents, hiding information, not being transparent to their shareholders or to the board about uh, situations that have taken place. With, let's say you have a situation with one of your key salesperson. Well, I don't want to get rid of John. John brings in 30% of our revenue, and yet, if we look at the Me Too movement, we have to be careful that we don't place a value profits over the proper way of handling situations. And um and
absolutely.
and you can kind of talk about this a little bit, making sure that people feel comfortable. Confidentiality is one thing, but also we want people to feel comfortable. How would
Oh
you
yeah.
go about um dealing with someone and making sure that they feel comfortable talking to you? And
Mhm. Well, I think this is one of those great opportunities where creating a comfortable environment is that opportunity of why we call
yes,
meta going beyond and above. Comfort means more than air conditioning or heat. Comfort even more than a comfortable chair. Those are huge pluses, but um, let's think. What are you wearing? Are you wearing a blazer and a tie? Can you take off the tie and blazer? Can
mm-hmm,
you set it aside? Can you leave the door open? That's kind of common in HR, of course. Offer them a coffee or a snack. Meet them for lunch in a place where there aren't prying ears, or even just using some of the techniques and tools that we teach here
yeah,
at MetaGagement, which is NLP, which is using techniques from neuroscience and science in general to help create that comfort zone,
yeah,
whether that's
yeah,
mirroring their body language. That's something you can easily look up if you haven't taken one of our courses, whether it's matching the pace of their speech, whether
very
it's
good.
matching their tone of voice, or you can also change their tone of voice by helping them de escalate by coming in very softly if they've
Mm-hmm.
come in very strong. So these are ways where you can create comfort where they don't even really see you doing it, but it can be tremendously useful. And the best investigators in the industry know how to work this.
Yeah, and here's a bonus that I would add with that. If you are the principal investigator, never ever walk in with a bunch of files under your arm and set them on the table. It's always better to walk in with a blank legal tablet It shows that you open, you have nothing to hide. Now, the truth of the matter is you've already formulated your questions in your head. But it's something about when you walk in and they can see that it's just a blank tablet, as opposed to you walking in with 15 files. It gives the impression you've already made up your mind. And this is just a kangaroo court. And so that's
Mm-hmm.
something that I've used that have put people at ease. And I would say, do you mind if I take notes? I want to make sure I capture everything. And again, it's making the person, I love the idea of, like you said, taking the tie off, the blazer off, making it more conversational. And that kind of leads to neutrality.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about for lunch, meeting in a neutral spot and not a stuffy office or,
Mm-hmm.
quote, the conference room.
Mm-hmm.
Within
Especially with the glass
yeah,
walls where
the
everyone's
glass,
walking
the
by.
fishbowl, right.
You
Everyone
don't have the
walking by like,
shades.
wow, what they talking about? Oh, they must
Yeah.
be in trouble.
Yeah. Well, and that's just one way to start, playing dangerously with external repercussions from other people who
Yes.
think they're being told on, so many other things. No, I love that, making them comfortable, and you can all pitch in and listen to that, because that works in every part of life, not just investigating and interviewing. That creating comfort zones for communication. That's your bonus today, whether it's in your personal relationships or in other
Yes.
organizations, or even with your kids and people in your family. Try it. You'll find that it can be very, very useful. So the next piece, before we go to break, the next piece in effective interviewing techniques, we talked about in preparing for the interview, we talked about setting the right environment. And then lastly, and just in the next 2 or 3 minutes, crafting your questions. So there are open-ended questions and closed-ended questions. I think you should ask me some open-ended and closed-ended questions, Lyman, as an example.
Yeah, as an example, I always like to begin with very easy close-ended questions, because again, it's setting the person at ease. We understand they're already tense, and so I would start like with something like this.
Ask me something. Ask me
I
something.
would say, could you state your first and last name and spell your last name? Make sure I capture it correctly.
Oh, sure. It's Anne, A-N-N-E, Scottlin, Scottlin.
Oh, that's one L, correct? In Scotland.
Uh, yes.
Okay.
No one ever asked me
Thank
that
you.
before.
And then another question I would ask to say, how long have you been employed with the company?
3 years.
3 years. Okay. Um, how's it been?
It's been good.
Okay.
It's it's been stressful, but I like working here, and I'm optimistic about staying here and making it work.
Okay. And I know you said it's kind of stressful, but tell me what's the best part of your job?
The best part of my job is actually doing my job.
Doing your
The actual tasks that I was hired to do, that is the best part of my job.
yeah. Now
Versus
what I'm doing
millions of
there,
other things.
even though you mentioned something stressful, I don't want to get to that part yet because I don't want to bring up anything that's going to create stress. And so I'm directing to easy questions and I'm trying to put her at ease because I'm going to move into the hard part. But right now, I'm just trying to make her at ease. I know you said stressful, but what do you like about your job? I'm trying to get those endorphins to start
Mhm,
flowing. And so
mhm.
that's part of why we're asking those open ended versus, and sometimes you would ask a closed question, such as, um, is my understanding that you've been here 3 years? Is that correct? Yes.
Right. And that's like the most simplistic definition, right, of a closed-ended question is
Right.
like a yes or no answer, but also your name is your name. So I guess, technically that kind of thing can be a closed-ended question. Um, Open-ended questions would be a little bit where you're seeking new information,
Yes.
or you already know the answer to some of this, but you'd like to see how they respond to that question. Um, so let's give me an example of that.
Yeah. An open ended, like I said before. Um, tell me a little bit about yourself as
Okay,
far
right.
as your position. Tell me, what your average day is like.
Mm-hmm.
Is to
Mm-hmm.
get the person to start talking. Even though I have your resume, I already have your job description. I just want to get you to start again. Feel
Mm-hmm.
comfortable talking to me. And that's what I mean
Well,
by open-ended
and I
versus a
think
closed-ended.
yes, and that also reminds me of another opportunity you have here near the beginning of the conversation in crafting your questions, which in most cases, let's say at least 80% of the time, the person knows or has a very good idea of why they've been called in. So it's not probably a complete mystery, at least in the majority of the time. So even before other ways of creating comfort is even asking them. Again, this is counterintuitive for some people when they're interviewing, but it's like, so before I go into what I have to find out from you today, what is it that you're hoping will be the outcome of our
Yeah.
meeting today? That's an open-ended question, and people hate feeling forced.
Hmm.
People hate feeling like they're in a corner, in a box, like they're on the stand. Whereas if they're like, oh my gosh, I just want this to be over and I want it to go away and I want to get on with my job and get home to my kids. This is not, can we tell me what you need from me? And I mean, they might even open up right there and just say, I'm an open book. I'll answer anything. I promise that I'm going to
That's
tell you
true.
the truth. Just tell me, because it's so stressful. And, poor management uses intimidation in these environments, but good management actually opens it up. Not only is it an honest way of opening the conversation and fair, but it also creates, again, that level of comfort where people are more likely to open up as opposed to close up. And when people
And
close
that's a
up,
very
that's when
good
they
point.
tend to lie more often, when they're feeling defensive or afraid.
And they're backed up in that corner. And this is why we avoid leading questions. And what we mean by leading questions is where you're leading the individual through questions down a path. For example, a leading question would be, so you were there, John was there, and Susan was there, and the two of you actually got into an argument, and both of you are at fault, correct? I've already assumed that both of you are at fault. I don't know.
Okay, if you
And
watch
so that's an
any court
example of
TV at
leading.
all, if you watch
Yes.
any court TV at all, with real or fictional, you will know that Your Honor, leading
Exactly.
prosecution is leading
You
the
know,
witness. They
right.
never said anything about their girlfriend, and you just said, "Now, it was you and your girlfriend, right? You were with
You
your
know,
girlfriend."
or you show them a picture. Now this person was also there, right? Well, the person you don't even know. And so you
Mm-mm.
want to avoid those type of,
Mhm.
techniques and things like that. Uh, but you said something in that raises a question going back to uh, the neutrality piece and making people feel a sense of comfort. And as a former actress, um, what were some of the techniques that you engaged in when you were coaching, let's say, new actors
Mhm.
for a scene that caused them to feel relaxed? I'm sure it's kind of like they can feel
Mhm.
tense. Do I get this role? I'm
Mhm.
auditioning. So, what was like one or two techniques that you would use to kind of help, new actors relax when they're taking your acting courses or something like that?
Yeah, no, this is a really good question because a lot of actors will, especially if they're newer, they get really tense when they know it's their turn to go up on the set, right? On the stage, even if it was in a training or class environment. Or let's say let's do it this way. Let's say they were up on the set and they did a terrible job in their scene. And I said, okay, Emily, let's stop there for a moment. Why don't you just come back down off the stage here? Just have a seat out here with the rest of us here. So let me just ask you a couple questions. So first of all, have you ever been in love?
Mm.
What did that feel like? What was most meaningful to you in that story? What did you take away from the importance of that? Or another question would be, let's see if we can take this a little more towards like business, which would be when you get angry, typically what happens in your day-to-day life? So even though these are really really deep rather than leading questions
Yes.
for someone who's going to be performing in a scene and pretending to be another person playing a character, it's still similar. So I took them off the spot. I took them off the stage. I put them down on the level with me and everybody else. I'm not sitting up in a higher chair, right? They were all on the same level. And then it's
That's
just,
good.
often what would happen, and again, this is acting and not an HR office, but often what would happen is you'd end up with someone getting really authentic, often getting emotional, and kind of what we call in acting raw, being they feel so safe,
Mm.
they can be completely honest with you, exposing their inner deepest concerns and fears. And when they go back up on the stage, then there's a huge drop in anxiety because they already are like, playing a character can't possibly be harder than,
Yes.
telling something intimate to a group of trusted colleagues. So now they go up there, they're solid, we call it grounded, and then often you'll have a really fantastic performance. So again, the principle of that is creating that comfortable environment, asking how their kids are, not like, how are your kids? Because it's on a check sheet, but like,
Right.
know their kids' names, right? How's Emily and Eric doing? Didn't you say Eric was just like his team just made the soccer championship? And bringing those things up, as we already know, that's usual. But when there's a tense situation, no one expects us to start with that.
Exactly.
So creating that comfort zone.
That's
Well, listen,
good.
we're going to have to take a really quick break, and then we'll be right back to wrap up on this episode today. We're having so much fun and covering some really great information. Stand by. Please like, subscribe, copy and paste this link and shoot it to a friend who would enjoy it. The link will work after the show stops streaming as well. We appreciate you doing a favor for us. So we'll be right back.
Are you feeling overwhelmed in your HR role? Discover MetaGagement, the forward-thinking solution that goes beyond traditional methods. Our personalized coaching services provide tailored support to help you enhance your professional and personal development. With our focused meta mindset system, you'll sustain motivation and achieve your goals. Experience the transformative power of our engaging events and webinars. Connect, learn, and grow with industry leaders and motivated individuals. MetaGage your organization today. Visit MetaGagement.com and start your journey.
Welcome back to MetaGagement-HR. This is part 2 of our episode today, conducting workplace investigations. And this is actually an entire series that we're doing right now. And today we're talking about interviewing with integrity. How do you master the art of investigative interviews? And we've talked a little bit about what investigators do. How can you craft questions? How do you create a comfortable environment? How can you mirror and be really authentic with the person you're speaking with? I'm going to jump back in just to wrap up what we were saying before, which was, crafting your questions and creating a comfortable environment. The other thing that I found extremely useful in the variety of corporate and other businesses that I've been in over the years is, you ask the person about something about them, and then you talk just a little bit. Now, don't get carried away because most people love talking about themselves, but talk just a tiny bit about yourself, right? Oh, so your son Eric made the soccer championship. What was the score? What did they do? And then you're like, yeah, so my son, he's into baseball, but strike up something in common that you have. Kids, their sports. But make it authentic. People can tell when you're pretending.
Yes, they can.
But if you say something like, yeah, and I was totally late to his last game and I feel terrible about it. So I've made some new resolutions to, show them that you're human too, especially if they feel like they're kind of on the stand. Show them that no one's perfect and that it's safe to find good, practical solutions that can work for everybody.
Yeah, that's so powerful. Building that rapport early on, showing your vulnerability, being transparent, and especially when it comes to difficult conversations, going back to what we talked about in the last episode, if you're dealing with, let's say, threats or violence or sexual misconduct where someone was physically or sexually assaulted in the workplace, making sure that you deal with those subjects and approach them with care and with empathy, as opposed to, and I've seen this happen. So, do you have any evidence that it actually happened to you? What were you wearing? It's my understanding that you like to party. So, was this just? I've literally cringed when I heard this type of interview that had no empathy and no sympathy for what the person had gone through. It was more as if the person who had been victimized was on trial based on what they were wearing, what they were doing, if alcohol was or was not involved,
I mean, this
or
is pure
their history.
Me Too, right? This is pure Me Too
Yes.
example, because we talked about that earlier or
Yes.
last time in that environment where, oh, well, why would she go up to his room for a meeting? Why would she wear that? Had they had a drink? It would get so ridiculous and in very difficult circumstances. And you have to know, and that's the hardest part, that you're sitting in the seat where you have to at least be the first screening of judging whether something inappropriate went down, whether it was mutual, whether it was not mutual. These are not easy questions.
They're not.
These are not. These very much fall into the gray area of life. I'm a big one to say, I was raised in a very black and white environment with everything. And I have learned that pretty much 95% of everything is gray.
Or some level.
So it's about how can you find the best information and what can you do with it? How can you diffuse the situation without creating injustice, but also not punish the innocent? I mean, these are the questions, classic questions of all time.
Very much so. And also making sure that not only you manage your emotional state. If a person shares something that is very painful, you want to make sure that you have the emotional maturity that you don't fall apart. I mean, I've seen inexperienced investigators, basically say, you know what, I'm sorry, I can't listen to this. I'm gonna have to bring someone else in. And they just melted into a ball of tears because when the person was sharing their story, it hit a nerve with them. Where again, you want to be empathetic, but you also have to remember you're in charge of that investigation, and you have to be able to control your own emotional outburst.
And I have a tip for you there, because, and then we have to wrap up immediately because we were just having so much good content here today. So this is the very end. But yes, we all now are aware of what trigger words mean, or trigger topics. And if you're an investigator, you have to be, if you need to get help or guidance in advance, do that. But you have to be prepared to know that you might get triggered. And if you think you will, then you need to take someone else in with you who can help balance that situation, or you can have a third party come in. And this is, again, an opportunity to go meta. I was just talking about this the other day with a psychologist. Which is one of the tools and tricks that I've learned over the years for myself, is when you are either in an argument with someone else, or if you're having to listen to something very uncomfortable, if you like to try unusual techniques, one of that is to envision that there is a hole here where they're talking at you. In other words, it's not like their words are arrows sticking in you. They don't stop in you. They aren't you. They're someone else's words. You're hearing them, but they're going straight through, and they don't have to stick. In other words, you don't have to suffer. And this is getting so many aspects of life. You don't have to suffer from what you're hearing. You can empathize. You can suffer later if you want. But let's just say these are passing through. My job is to be a conduit of information, not their best friend, not their judge, just a conduit of information. I'm listening. I'm here. I'm going to process this later. Right now, it's just going to go right through. And I've had a lot of people have tremendous success with that,
Very
just
good
thinking of it
technique.
differently.
Very good technique.
Well, we are out of time. So much fun. Join us next time for our third episode in this series, where we're going to explore the process of collecting and evaluating evidence to ensure a fair and accurate investigation and its outcome. Please join us streaming every Tuesday, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. And thank you, Lyman. We'll see you all next time.
Take care, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.